Rangers fans, welcome to Season 4 of Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast powered by Believe Network. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. First off, happy holidays, everybody. Please stay safe. Have a great time. We will get into JT Miller's injury, Gabe Perot's emergence, and playoffs. Talk about playoffs.
There's no way to put it. That Flyers game had the most matinee hockey energy imaginable. There was both teams not really wanting to be there for the first 20 minutes or so, where you could tell they were both a little slow to the draw. And that's normal, matinee game. Both teams generally don't have their feet under them, and it takes a little while to get going. It's true, second half of back-to-backs usually as well. Usually takes about a period to get your legs under you. And that second period was about as chaotic as it gets. The third period was about as chaotic as it gets. And in the carnage of that game, other than Brennan Othman learning who Nick Delorier is, JT Miller suffered an upper body injury, whether it's a clavicle or a shoulder. It's going to be a while. And at this point, he's their most used forward. He plays 15-54 even strength, 3 minutes of power play, almost 2 minutes of penalty kill every single night. This puts even more on the plate of Trocheck and Zibanejad, so Zibanejad will likely kick inside, and they'll move somebody up into the winger spots there. But this is a team that coming into the year, we knew was extremely shallow up front, that one or two injuries would derail this group. And yes, every team is going to suffer injuries at some point. You look at Florida and the injuries they have endured this year. You look at some of the injuries the Oilers have dealt with, the Golden Knights have dealt with. I mean, the Golden Knights last night, no Eichel, no Theodore, and I forget who the third guy was, but they're missing three regular starters in their top nine and one of their better defensemen. The Leafs have dealt with a variety of nagging injuries. Injuries are an inevitable component of hockey. The problem becomes the Rangers tried to piecemeal together 35 goals with 7 guys in the bottom 6. You know, the joke the Leafs fans were making about, oh, we don't need Mitch Marner. We'll have Nick Waugh and we'll have Matthias McKelly combined, put together, get the 100 points that Marner did. As good, I shouldn't even say that, as good as JT Miller can be, the Rangers are not replacing even the production he's given them already. And Miller's not having anything resembling a great season. He's on pace for 58, 59 points, something in that ballpark. He's dealt with a variety of injuries. He hasn't really been healthy all that often. He's got the couple overtime winners, which are really the one feather in his cap. Whether or not this harms his Olympic prospects, we'll have a conversation depending on how long he's out, and we could talk about that a little bit later. But the Rangers are running out of guys at this point. You're missing Fox. You're missing JT Miller. Those are 2 of your 4 or 5 best players. And this team was already shallow with those guys. I really don't know where you expect the offense to come from at this point. Yeah. Unless Perot gets going, unless somebody who's been here gets going, the math is going to start to become uncharitable most nights.
And it doesn't get any easier when you lose games to Nashville, when you lose games to Vancouver. I understand Vancouver's won a few in a row since firing, since trading away Quinn Hughes. But Vancouver is a team you have to beat. Nashville is a team you have to beat. When you go back and you look at, even last season, right, when the Rangers missed the playoffs by 6 points in that disaster of a season, you go back and you go, okay, well, if they just beat a couple bad teams here and there, they still make the playoffs, and there still could have been something there. And the same thing can apply here where, you're definitely not playing as badly as you were last season. That's, that isn't a high bar to clear, to be fair, but that they are still playing better. But, the result can be the same where you're playing better, but look at how close the East standings are. It's December 22nd, and the difference between last place and a playoff spot is 7 points. Every single point matters. Every period matters. Every shift matters. Every single goal that you score and give up matters right now. So you getting shut out by Vancouver, you losing to Nashville, and Trocheck was very pissed off after the game, talking about how the effort was terrible and all these things. that's great that he feels that way, but it's December.
We're talking
right.
about pride and effort in December.
Right.
We got problems here, man.
Everything matters. And if you fast forward to April and the Rangers, let's say, miss the playoffs by 3 or 4 points, and you go, oh, well, if they just beat Nashville in that really bad game that they played in December, then they would have made it, right? Like, every game matters. So when we're talking about pride, or we're talking about, oh, we didn't get up for this game or whatever. I mean, we're 3 months into the season. It's not enough for you to tell me that. Until you show me that you are willing to put in that effort and be prideful and all these things every game. The Rangers are 0-6-1 in back-to-backs. They haven't won the second game of a back-to-back this season. And the players talked about it too, where it's not an excuse, and every team
but
has to do it.
When you say that, it is an excuse. Like, you're trying to cripple that argument before they can make it. But by addressing it, you're acknowledging that you're aware of it. And look, we know how human psychology works. If you're aware of, I might be able to get away with this, if your boss isn't in, you can get away with a 70% effort, that type of deal. We know how this works. We know how the Rangers operate. Look, second half of a back-to-back, bad team, on the road, week before Christmas, missing your captain, missing your best defenseman. The laundry list of excuses are compiling. And as the season goes along, we're seeing the new developing one. The Rangers lack finishing talent. Well, the Rangers are not existence in an ether. They did not manifest. They were not created by a wizard in a cauldron. Somebody assembled this team in a way that lacks shooting talent. Saying the Rangers lack shooting talent is inaccurate. The person who built the roster did not prioritize shooting talent, and that's on him. That's not on Connor Sheary, who is trying, even though he can't do the job he's being asked to do. That's not on Will Cooley, who's probably being overcast in the role he's presently in for where his skill set's at, for where Zibanejad's at in his career, with what Panarin and Trocheck are respectively capable of, what Lafreniere is capable of. This is what you got, man. I don't want to hear about, well, we didn't play with pride. Well, whose fault is that, man? Don't tell me it's about pride when you lose to one of the worst. And look, I know Nashville's playing a little bit better as of late. They're out of the basement in the West, but it's still Nashville. It's a backup goalie. It's a backup goalie. They had 10 shots on goal through 2 periods against if I remember correctly what Valakat had said during the pregame, it's like 64th best goalie in a couple different categories. We're talking about the worst of the worst backups. And you couldn't score a goal until it was over. And it was a Johnny Brodzinski. I desperately want to stay in the NHL, so I need to try my ass off every single shift type goal. You need more guys like that. And unfortunately, as we sit here, with each passing game that you get efforts like that. I mean, you go back to the Anaheim game last Monday where they were in that game for a while, and then the first Anaheim goal happens and you get the real deflating. You give up the 5-on-3 shorthanded goal, which is about as embarrassing as it gets. And that game's over. You're not scoring 3-4 straight against Anaheim without them scoring more on you. It's just, they don't have it. They don't. They just do not have it.
Watching that game against Vancouver, I tweeted out, if you are sitting here watching this game, you cannot, in good faith, come to our comment section and tell us that we are too negative about this team. There is no shot that, and by the way, it's again, we say this every now and again. We're not being negative about this team because we enjoy being negative. Hey, the Rangers are getting shut out by the Vancouver Canucks, who are in the basement, and they got lapped by the Nashville Predators, who are in the basement. And they lost to, as you said a second ago, they lost to a backup goalie who is one of the worst backup goalies in the league. And they couldn't even muster up a few more shots on them. Like, the Predators just essentially dominated most of that game. And you're going to come in here and tell us that we're too negative? I mean, if you want pom-pom wavings, like, you got to go somewhere else, man. Like, that's not what we're here for. We're here to tell you the truth. We're here to tell you what's going on. And right now, yeah, the game against Philly was fun, I guess, in the third period. That second period was not a whole lot of fun. But they came back. It was 4-2, Philly, and with like 13 minutes to go in the second. Then Trocheck scored, and then Zibanejad tied it up, and we get to the shootout. They kill off two penalties in the overtime, which was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen that before in watching hockey. Two penalties in a 5-minute time in overtime is crazy. But they did it, and the crowd was into it. They won the shootout, right? You got because it was a lot of ebbs and flows within that game. It was after the first period that the crowd was cheering, and then the second period was a lot of booing. It was a lot of I heard fire Drury chants around MSG, and it got a little bit louder as the game went on. And then the Rangers tied it up, and then at the end of the regulation, everybody was on their feet. It was, the crowd was into it, and they won in the shootout. It was great. And then you follow that up with that game against Nashville. I mean, again, I don't want to give them excuses, right? It's like I understand it's tough. It's not easy. You're on the second end of a back-to-back. Sure, right. You're missing JT Miller. You're missing Adam Fox. You're missing Gabe Perot. You're missing everybody's favorite player in the NHL, I guess, Matt Rempe, right? Like, those guys are sick. You went from MSG, you flew to Nashville in not a whole lot of time in between, right? Like, you're playing a game like 30 hours after just finishing the last one. Or like, I understand all these things. You also have to understand that every team in the NHL does this. And not every team in the NHL has that kind of performance against that kind of team. The Predators are bad. Listen, if you want to, obviously you want to win the game, but at least show up a little bit more than you did. Because that's the kind of performance that makes everybody go, here we go again. You came back against Philadelphia, a team that's in a playoff spot that, is feeling good about themselves. They were up 4-2 in the third against a team that couldn't win at home, that couldn't score goals, especially at home. And you came back and you won that game. And to turn that performance around into what happened in Nashville is disappointing, to say the least. And that's a nice word I will use.
And the thing is, it's understandable that you're going to have ebbs and flows game to game, that you're not going to have the same energy and you have to be a little more strategic. And that's fine. That's perfectly understandable that even within a given game, if you come out and you have a great first, it's going to be hard to sustain that first, second period because the other team is going to adjust. They're going to counter and you need to counter to their counter. And it creates that back and forth cat and mouse. And same thing on second half of a back-to-back. They didn't play great for a majority of the Flyer game, but they ultimately came back and won. As I said before, if they came out really flat in the first against Nashville, that's understandable. Second half of a back-to-back on the road, short travel turnaround, perfectly understandable. But for the intensity to never really get there in the game at all, to the point, like I said, they had 10 shots on goal through 40 minutes of regulation. All situations, not 5-on-5, all situations, they managed 5 shots on goal a period against a Nashville team that when they came to the Garden at the beginning of December, it looked over for them. Nashville looked as lifeless as possible. That's the most goals the Rangers have scored on home ice, was the Nashville game on that Monday. I think they hung a 6 spot on them.
Yeah.
And the last point I wanted to make here, and I wanted to ask you this because I think it's an interesting question. So there are two forward combinations, including JT Miller, that have an even goal distribution this season, even or better, meaning they have outscored their opponents. He's had a bunch of different combinations, but only 2 other forward sets and him combined have given them positive. One of them you will 100% get if you think about even slightly. The other one you might not. The other one, it makes sense. The first one does. The second one, not so much. So give me a guess who you think I'm talking about for one of the 2.
It's got to be Panarin, I would think.
And one more. Who's the other forward with them?
And Lafreniere. No?
Nope. They're negative.
Oh, well, that's good.
It's another top six forward.
It's a Benajad?
Yes, that's the one. That's the most common line that's had success. The other one you probably won't get because it hasn't played a lot. It's only played 23 minutes, but they've outscored opponents 2-0.
It's like Laba, Cooley, and Perot, right? That's the line.
No. It's with JT Miller.
It's with oh my god, it's with JT Miller. Is it Laba, Miller, and like I don't know, Brodzinski or something like that?
It's Zibanejad, Perot, JT Miller. Something worth noting. Okay. And look, 20 minutes, and you wanted to talk about Perot, and we could segue to talking about him here now before we move on to talking about slightly bigger picture. But the glimmers are interesting. You see the distribution, you see the vision. The only real questions are the foot speed and the size. If he can gain another 5-10 pounds, if he can get slightly faster, I think there's something there. If not, I think you are looking at a middle six forward with some upside, somebody who's a 40-point guy who on a power play might be able to give you a little bit more. But I think this is going to be a really important player in the Chris Drury project in a few senses. Number one, it doesn't look like Brennan Othman's going to be much at the NHL level as a Ranger. Not to say he can't be, but it doesn't seem like that. So we're going to call Perot the first real project development piece. They drafted him high. They held on to him in spite of the fact that at 2 separate points, they probably could have traded him and gotten helpful, meaningful reinforcements in real time. And they need this guy to be something. As much as we bemoan the Rangers' lack of prospects, which they're 20th to 25th, depending on which prospect service you use for ranking in their organization. With that said, they need this guy to be something desperately. And I think what Mike Sullivan said the other day about moving him to the third line versus the top six, I think it makes sense in the short term. But I do think, and we talked about this a lot last year down the backstretch of the regular season, we are going to reach an inflection point in this season, the one we are presently in, where it's no longer about can we make the playoffs right now. It's going to become about what do we have in Perot, in Laba, in Morrow. I don't know why I called Scott Morrow, but you get what I'm saying here. At a certain point this year, you are going to reach a tipping point where you need to see what these guys are, because that's more important, because the more information you have about those guys, the better you can plan for whatever you need to still go out and get. But I like the glimmers. He needs more time. Unequivocally, he just needs more time. He's a child. I don't even think he's legal drinking age yet. He needs more time. And the Rangers are trying to have their cake and eat it too with him, which is tough because we see this over and over again with these young pieces on teams pushing for playoff spots. Coaches don't want to give them top 6 minutes. They don't want to put them on the power play because they're risky, and coaches hate risk. Coaches are the most risk-averse people on the planet. They should be CPAs. But you continue talking about this, and you're telling yourself, well, if they're going to make the playoffs, they're probably going to be the 7 or 8 seed. They're going to be one of the 2 wild cards. And wouldn't it be better off if they're going to be a 7th or 8th seed that they try out some of these guys? I'm glad they finally came to their senses and they're using Morrow on the power play. I know he's had some really rough hiccups, but he's learning, and it's important he learns. It's important he makes those mistakes rather than just scolding the guy. But that's the mindset I think they're going to take with Perot, because they have a lot of skin invested in his game now. They have bided their time. They have held on to him. And now he's it as far as forward prospects with top 6 trajectories. They don't have, I think Brett Berard might be an NHL player. I think Othman might be an NHLer. Neither of those guys is top 6ers. Perot, they are banking on being a top 6er, if not a first liner. And that starts with playing. It's that straight up.
And there's a couple of things I noticed about Perot and Morrow in that game against Philadelphia. One, before the game, Mike Sullivan said that we'll put him in the third line and then we'll see if he plays well. And if we need to, we'll put him on the second line. And guess what he did? He started on the third line, and then Mike Sullivan put him on that second line once he realized he needed to make that switch. He made that switch, and then Gabriel Perot continued to play well. And another thing with Scott Morrow is, I was there for that game, and I watched him have that really bad giveaway to give the Flyers that shorthanded goal, and that made it. I think it was 4-2 Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And they called a timeout, and off of that next shift, Scott Morrow was back on the ice, which I thought was fascinating. Because, the conjecture, at least, from people that was sitting next to me was, Scott Morrow is like that. Like, this is that's type of moment that gets Scott Morrow demoted to the AHL. That's the kind of game where, you're not going to see Scott Morrow for a little bit. He was on the ice the next shift. And I think that's an important coaching change that we've seen over the past few seasons where, let's say, Dan Girardi makes that kind of mistake. Dan Girardi would be back out there at age 32. Scott Morrow is a prospect, and he would not be on the ice if it was AV, if it was Gallant, if it was, some David Quinn, whoever it is, insert name here.
It scares me every single time they cut to the bench and David Quinn's drawing on the dry erase board. It scares the living hell out of me every single time. I know he's on the staff, but it is so jarring and disorienting. I just needed to say that. Yeah, like I was watching the Nashville game with like 5 minutes to go. I was looking down, I looked up, and I like audibly gasped and leaned back like, oh God, that's right. He is on this team.
Yeah. And that's the kind of difference that I think Mike Sullivan was brought in here to make, where, he's a great coach and, he's implementing a system and he can't go out there and score the goals himself. Right. But also it comes down to how he views building up prospects. And I think that is an underrated part of the hire in and of itself. Is you had coaches in the past that who shall remain nameless that were like, that's not my job to coach these players or to build prospects or whatever the quote was. Mike Sullivan is taking a different approach where, Scott Morrow is going to come with hiccups. Gabriel Perot is going to come with hiccups. But you know what? This is how good players will learn. How else are they supposed to get better if you don't let them figure things out when they're up here? Scott Morrow had 2 really bad giveaways in that game against Philadelphia. But you know what? Mike Sullivan continued to put him out there on the ice. And Scott Morrow, even with those giveaways, had a pretty good game, all things considered. And that's the kind of project building that I like to see. That's a highlight right now of Mike Sullivan's coaching. And that's something that I don't think should go under the radar, because when, coaches bench players after stuff like that, will get on their case. And I think in this situation, it's good to highlight like, hey, Mike Sullivan continued to lean on Scott Morrow after he made that bad giveaway mistake. And I think that's important for his overall development.
It's integral. And the Rangers have a slight difference here. At least Mike Sullivan is going to be here for a little while. It's not a case of somebody who is coaching for their job and has to make short-minded, narrow decisions the way, say, Peter Laviolette was at the end of last year, where he was running as aggressive a lineup as possible, the most conservative group of guys possible, so that, to quote Art Howe, I can defend what I do in job interviews next year. It's different. Mike Sullivan has carte blanche to organize this group in a way that he thinks makes sense. And part of that is giving these younger guys his tools to make them successful. It's been a problem in the Rangers organization for a long time that there hasn't been a lot of synergy between the AHL and NHL operations. Part of that is because the Rangers are churning over NHL coaches so often. They can't really build a program with continuity to teach these younger guys. That's one of the secret sauces for Tampa Bay, is that John Cooper's been there forever, and we can tell you exactly what he's going to expect from you when you get up there, and we're going to put you in as much of a position to succeed as possible. And then the other part of it is, because the Rangers are so injured, they don't have a choice. And look, was the 5-forward thing worth attempting a couple times? Yes, absolutely. I have no problem with the 5-forward power play alignment if you are in a pinch. It made sense. But it was bad enough that they looked at it and said, and it took too long, frankly. I'm just going to be honest. It took too long for them to look at it and say, we need to change this. This needs to be someone else. And they now have given Morrow something to work on to build his confidence. And that's one of the real keys to that relationship is it's not just you need to give him the opportunity, but in giving the young guy power play minutes and giving them an opportunity in the man advantage, you are giving them a real opportunity to feel like a contributor, to build confidence and feel like, okay, if I do well in this role, it is going to give me an opportunity. And look, maybe Fox comes back and Morrow does get sent back to Connecticut, and that's a different conversation when that happens. But at the very least, you are giving this guy some stock. And that has been one of my big critiques of the organization over the years is you never made the Heedles, Kakos, Lafrenières, Miller, Schneiders. You never made that tier of young guy feel like they had a lot of equity in this team, that no matter what they did, eventually they were going to hit a glass ceiling, that somebody in front of them was more important than them. And that was ultimately going to kneecap how far they could go, how much progress they could make in the system. I think now, because the Rangers are in such a dire strait and because they need to be willing to ride the hot hand to some degree, I think it's only logical to some degree that if you get Morrow going in this role, at least till Fox comes back, great. If you can get Perot in a top 6 role while JT Miller's out, great. I'm going to be honest with you. At this point, we can't keep doing the Connor Sheary thing. We just can't. It is not tenable. There is a reason he spent the entirety of last year in the AHL. He is not a bad hockey player. He is not a first liner. He is not a second liner. I would dare say he might not even be a third liner on a good team. He is a functional player, but the Rangers need offense. And I would much rather watch Perot learn to score than watching Sheary continue to be half a second off or half a second too soon, half a second too late. And they are leaving opportunities on the table in that respect. That's my one real critique, is that we are reaching late December at this point, and we're still doing that. I would like to say they are figuring some things out, but for everything they are figuring out, you get the monkey wrenches thrown in there, you get the injuries thrown in there, and that's the big question coming out of this week now. And I think a lot of people are starting to come to terms with, all right, let's say Miller's out 2 weeks. If they're saying week to week, we'll say the minimum 2 weeks. So this week, next week, comes back the new year. Okay. You got the Winter Classic. You've got, I want to say it's 15 games until the beginning of February. You get 2 weeks off for the Olympics. You get 3 weeks, trade deadline, 3 weeks, playoffs. It is going to be about as hellacious a run as it gets. I mean, they played 5 games in 8 days, 5 games in 7 days the last week. They are up against it right now, and they are a shallow team. And it's not an exaggeration to say one more injury to a key contributor, this team's cooked. You get Shesterkin hurt, you get Panarin hurt, you get Zibanejad hurt. They simply don't have the guys to dress a competitive team. Really quickly, you're 1 injury away from being Calgary. You're 1 injury away from being Vancouver. All right, maybe 2 from Vancouver, but this is a Rangers team that is as up against it as it gets. And by the grace of the NHL gods, they're somehow not that far out of the mix. I cannot make sense of how bad everyone is this year. It is one of the more perplexing things I've seen in a long time.
It's really funny because Columbus is the only team in the Eastern Conference below 500.
Yep.
Which is, it's so funny to me how every team is not terrible, and yet there are so many teams that are just mid. So aggressively mid. Like, you know, Boston has finally fallen from the sky after their ridiculously good start, right? Florida has been playing really well, and I think they're going to, get back into a playoff spot. Ottawa's won 4 in a row, right? Like Pittsburgh can't hold a lead if their lives depended on it. Buffalo, out of nowhere, they fire their GM. Now they've won 6 in a row. By the way, and this is how close everything is. The Buffalo Sabres, your Buffalo Sabres, my Buffalo Sabres, our Buffalo Sabres, to quote Adam Shine here for a second. Like, the Buffalo Sabres have won 6 games in a row out of thin air, And now, by the way, are 2 points behind the Rangers with 3 games in hand and are 3 points out of a playoff spot. The Columbus Blue Jackets are dead last in the East. They have 34 points. Philadelphia and New Jersey both have the wild card spots, and they have 41 points. 7 points is the difference between the worst team in your conference and a playoff spot. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying every single shift matters right now. In any game that you play, it matters that you win the period, that you win the shift, that you get that extra goal, because there is no breathing room. Like it'd be different, if you had like 10 or 12 teams in the East be marginally good, and then you have 3 teams that are just falling apart, because at least there's some space. There's no San Jose from a couple of years ago, right, where they won, I'm exaggerating, but like 4 games all of all the entire season, where they were purposely essentially just being like, all right, well, Celebrini, you go out there, have fun, buddy, because you're going to have to do everything for us because everybody else can't do anything, right? Like, there is no team right now in the Eastern Conference or in the NHL as a whole that is actively tanking. There is no Chicago of a few years ago, the San Jose's of a couple of years ago, right? Of the Buffaloes a few years ago. Like, there are no really bad teams. So everyone right now, at least when it comes to the standings right now.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
This could change in a month.
Calgary is an atrocity most nights.
I
know they're on a nice little run right now.
I understand.
Nashville apparently is good now, even though
allegedly
most of the season they've been bad.
Right. Well, I'm looking just at the current standings.
Yeah.
You look at where everybody is. The worst team right now is Chicago and Seattle. Chicago's lost 5 in a row. They're not looking so good.
Bernard's hurt. He's been their best player far.
But even
away,
then, Seattle, who can't score a goal. I mean, this is like, if you think the Rangers can't score, go watch a Seattle game. I mean, they look like they're playing soccer. I mean, these guys cannot score a goal to save their life, right? Seattle and Chicago both had 32 points. Wild card spots, the Kings and the Mammoth have 39. Like, it's so close in the West and in the East that you just cannot take a game off. And right now, the Rangers took Vancouver off. They took Anaheim off for a little bit, which led to them, falling apart and then ultimately not getting enough offenses to win that game. And then you took Nashville off. These are points that you cannot leave on the table. Even if you lose the game, you got to show up to them. You didn't show up against Nashville. You didn't show up against Vancouver. And when the standings are this close, you cannot afford to do that. But that's what they're doing, and it becomes more frustrating as time goes on.
So I think the concerning point to take off of what you just said, I don't think it's so much as they didn't show up as this is what they are. They simply don't have the guys. They have assembled a really high floor, low ceiling team. They are, I wrote it down here. One second. It's on my next page of my notes. They are 29th in goals and 30th in goals per game. They cannot score. When you cannot score, you are entirely at the whim of your superstars. And when you get a couple goals from Panarin or from Zibanejad, you can win. If you don't, you lose. That is the Rangers' prospect right now. And you're not really getting it on the power play because their power play has been awful again. But this is a team that cannot score consistently. When you are subject to the whims of the coin flip and you need luck to break your way because they are a poorly constructed team, because they don't have goal scoring, and we knew they lacked goal scoring coming into the year. They didn't meaningfully replace it in any way. It leaves you just here to shrug. And why is it that we were able to identify these issues and we're in December and you still have people talking, well, let's see what they are. This is a team of veterans. Like, as good as I think Perot might eventually be, ditto Morrow, ditto anyone else you think in the system, none of those guys is a transformational player. Even if Morrow is good, I don't think he's ever going to be like a Fox good. If Perot is good, I think at best he's going to be a 20 goal guy, maybe a 60-point forward. Those aren't franchise-shifting pieces. Those are C pieces in the ultimate grand picture things, and that's the problem here. The Rangers have a bunch of B- and C+ guys, and they're asking them to be the bellwethers. They're asking JT Miller and Trocheck and Zibanejad and 35-year-old Panarin to be the best players on a championship caliber team. And it'd be one thing if these guys were all still in their physical primes and you could lean on them the way Colorado leans on Makar and McKinnon, Edmonton leans on Draisaitl and McDavid. You could play them 22, 23 minutes a night. They were over a point per game. Those guys are all on the backswings of their careers at this point. I think it's reasonably safe to say. I mean, Zibanejad's on pace for 56 points. Miller's on pace for less than 60 points. I think the only Ranger on pace for more than 60 points is Panarin right now. And even that, he's probably not going to hit 80 for the first time as a Ranger if he maintains his current pace. All of that is to say, even if you hang around, is it worth hanging around? What's the point here? And that's the big question that comes out of this week. And I wanted to tie it to the Leafs because I had watched the Steve Dangle pod for the first time in a while because one of my friends had said, I think you'd find it interesting in the context of the Rangers. And the Leafs guys are ready to blow it up. And they're going to miss, they might miss the playoffs for the first time in 7-8 years. And they haven't had nearly the regular season or postseason success as the Rangers. I would argue that Matthews and Nylander, even this diminished, injured version of Austin Matthews, is still probably be the best player on the Rangers. I think Nylander would be the best forward on the Rangers as well if he were healthy. And they understand the gambit here. And yes, prospects and draft picks do not equal guaranteed success. We know this. We just did this. We literally just did this. We traded 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021 for 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. We traded 5 for 3 years, and that's all we got. We got 3 good kicks at the can. We had 2 honest good chances. One, they flubbed. They made the wrong decisions at the trade deadline. And that's all we got to show for it. Now, you can do what the Bruins are going to try and do. You can do what Winnipeg is going to try and do. You can do what St. Louis is going to try and do. You can tell yourself we're still in this. Or you can be honest. And the season ticket holders are still getting reasonable value for their tickets right now, so the building's still pretty full. It was reasonably full on Saturday, even though it was pretty quiet on TV for a good 50 minutes of the game. All of this is to say,
it was quiet in the arena, too, for what it's worth.
Yeah. It's hard on TV now because the acoustics are different, because it's not nearly as loud as it used to be on TV. But all of this is to say, this is a team that wants to be a contender, that doesn't have the assets to go out and get a star player, that no star players are going to become free agents, and has no real path to getting where it wants to beyond the internal pieces improving or staving off regression and adding on to that. You know, the Rangers' path here is becoming what Washington is, where you have 3 really solid lines. You develop your Protas brothers. That would be very nice. You develop your Connor McMichaels. And the Rangers have to do that if you're going to try and tell me we're going to stave off regression and we're not going to be able to go out and get a start. Even Washington was able to go out and get Jacob Chychrun, who's been great for them the last 2 years. It's about as rough roster math as it's going to get, because there just aren't enough star players to go around, especially when, you know, Florida's got 8. Tampa's got 5, Dallas has 5, Minnesota's got 5, Colorado's got 10, Vegas has 6, and the Rangers have 3.5, maybe 4 if you want to be generous to some guys. It is a really rough place to be because you're Sisyphus, you're rolling the ball up the hill to get to the first round, to get smacked by Florida or Tampa or Carolina or New Jersey. It's just not a great place to be.
This is the 9 to 12. This is the 9 to 12 spot where, if you remember back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, the top 8 teams would make the playoffs and then everybody else would not. And the 9 to 12 spot is the hellhole spot where you're not bad enough to tank for, you know, the best prospects in the upcoming draft, but you're also not good enough to really contend for a playoff spot and really push for a playoff spot and really show to other teams that, hey, you know, we deserve to be here. We deserve to be in the playoffs, and you should be afraid of us. And the Rangers right now are one of those teams in that hellhole where, yeah, like they're gonna win these games, and they're definitely not as bad as they were last year, and they are going to win some of these games, especially on the road. I mean, the Rangers right now still, even after that Nashville loss, lead the league in road wins. They have 13. They're 13-6-1 on the road. They are really good for some reason away from home. But that game against Philadelphia was their 5th win at home. They're 5-10-3 at home. I don't know. It's continues to be mesmerizing how Jekyll and Hyde they are away and at MSG. They're like the LA Kings are the exact same team. The LA Kings right now are the Rangers of the West, where the Kings are 4-6-4 at home, 11-4-5 away from home, and they can't score goals. They have 88 goals for in 34 games. The Rangers are the only team in the East with less than 100 goals scored to this point. The Rangers have 97. Everybody else has triple digits or more. Well, you know what I mean. Like the Kings are the best equivalent of the Rangers right now, and they have 39 points, but they have 34 games played in a wild card spot, whereas Rangers have 40 in 38 games played. Like these are teams that, I said this last week. It's very difficult to score in the regular season. It becomes exponentially harder to score in the playoffs. So if you cannot find a way to consistently score goals in December against the Nashville Predators, then how are you possibly going to generate offense in April against Tampa Bay or Florida or Washington or who, they play Washington. Was it tomorrow? I think it is before the Christmas break. We'll see how that goes. But if you can't generate team offense against some of the worst teams on some random day in December, then how are you going to do it in a 7-game series against a team that's, one, clearly better than you, and two, will scout and counter you so well because they have all this time and all this preparation to counter you? How are you going to generate offense against them? Because you can't do it against a team that scouted you for like 3 hours. So what are you going to do against a team like Washington that will spend days pouring over your system and breaking it down? What are you going to do then?
So I went and looked this up. I was curious about it in regards to the power play specifically. So when I went and looked it up, the single most jarring thing is when you scale it out per 60 minutes, and I understand that's a lot of power play time, the Rangers are getting 4 fewer power play goals per hour than they did 2 years ago when they won the President's Trophy this year, same as last year. Almost the exact same rate of goals this year versus last year. This year, 6.4. Last year, 6.3. The year they won the President's Trophy, 10.1. And the thing is, and what's interesting, it's largely based on the fact they're not finishing. Because the high danger chances are pretty in line with what they were 2 years ago. They're generating more high danger chances per 60 on the power play this year than they did 2 years ago. But the thing is, they are converting 5% fewer of their shots on goal on the power play. And it's pretty academic. They have one play on the power play now. They have the cross seam pass, and that's it. Or the occasional jam play on a rebound. But they don't generate nearly the power plays they used to. That was the other thing I was curious about, the volume of power play opportunities they were going to get. The Rangers are on pace to earn 191 power plays this year. Last year, 210. The year before that, 246. The year before that, 245. The year before that, 218, but that's the first year out of COVID, and they officiated a little bit looser that year. All of this is to say, they generate shots on goal at even strength at one of the lowest rates in the entire league. They convert the scoring chances they do generate at one of the lowest rates in the entire league. Their defense, especially with no Fox, cannot meaningfully tilt the ice in game control ways, cannot contribute to offense on a big level. They are not generating enough power play opportunities to work out the power play problems they are having. This is an offense that is entirely rooted in outworking and getting lucky. It's admirable. They try most nights, which, again, not a very high floor. They try pretty hard most nights. I commend Mike Sullivan for getting the buy-in on what he's trying to get this group to do. They are extremely limited because they are a poorly constructed roster. They lack talent at several positions. They lack depth pretty much everywhere. Other than goalie, I'll give them that. Quick's been great. They've been gotten really good goaltending from both guys. That's fine. This is a team that is a one-line team right now with no JT Miller, and they have 45 games to go, and we still have questions about whether they should buy at the deadline. I feel like I'm out of my mind at times when I hear people talking about adding to this group. Now, if you want to do a hockey trade, that's different. If you want to try and turn Lafreniere into something, okay, we could talk about doing a hockey trade. But in terms of straight up buying, absolutely not.
No, and that's the thing that you have to ask yourself is, okay, well, who am I buying? Yeah. What am I giving up to buy? And the thing that I'm buying, is that going to move the needle in such a drastic direction that this one thing, or maybe it's a couple of things that I'm buying, is it going to drastically alter the course of the season? Like, let's say I turned on franchise mode in NHL and I booted up. Okay, let's say I wanted to trade for Connor McDavid. Okay, so I'm going to trade everybody on this team for McDavid. And now McDavid walks into MSG and he is playing with Gabriel Perot. No, he's not, because he's in Edmonton. He's playing with you and I on the first line. And, like Mike Sullivan's anchoring the second line, and you have David Quinn on his way. Like, the Rangers will have nobody, actually nobody. And that's another worry that you have to think about when you make these kind of big trades. Is like, okay, well, you can't trade and buy, like, you can, I guess, for an auxiliary. Like, maybe if you trade like a third round pick for maybe somebody that's like 25 at the deadline that, has some kind of runway to get better, like I would be okay with that kind of deal. But there's no world in which even with like this trade deadline and this free agency market is going to be just, there's going to be nobody there. Everybody's either re-signed or is going to be traded by then. There's not going to be a whole lot. And the players that are going to be available, teams are going to demand a king's ransom for them, especially centers. Centers are in hot demand. Maybe
You're
that's not the one spot.
Patrick Laine or Kevin Hayes, Anders Lee.
Sure. I mean, Anders Lee I'll take Anders Lee, but the Islanders aren't trading Anders Lee because the Islanders are closer to a playoff spot than the Rangers are. I'll tell you that right now. The Islanders are currently in a playoff spot with 36 games played and 42 points. I understand that that's 2 more points than the Rangers are, but again, like the Islanders are playing better hockey than the Rangers are right now, and they can score goals every now and again, which is, more so than I could say about the other team we're talking about. Like, if you buy heavy, is that going to change the course of the season? Like, if you buy a top 6, like with the limited assets that you have, let's say you trade Gabriel Perot for a bona fide top 6 forward. Okay. You still have Connor Sherry playing on the second line. Okay, that doesn't help you. Okay, well, let's say you trade Lafreniere for a top 6 winger and maybe a third line forward. Okay, you still have Connor Sherry playing top 6 minutes. Maybe he plays third line if this new player comes in and plays second line minutes. Okay, sure, but the problems are still there. You might get a little bit better along the margins, but it's like you have a piece of paper and there's a big hole in the middle and you are coloring around it and thinking that you are making it better. Sure. But guess what? That big hole in the middle, you still got, and you can't fix it. Taping it up isn't going to fix the problem. It is beyond repair. So what is coloring along the margins and finding a way to make it a little prettier going to do to a piece of paper that you cannot save? It's gone.
All right, we're going to do a quick exercise and then we're going to get out of here. So You mentioned LA. Would you say the Rangers or the Kings have a better future? Or would you say they're about equal?
I would probably say about equal. I think the Kings have more young potential on that roster, but as we know about potential, if you don't show it, then it doesn't really mean anything. And the Rangers still have Shesterkin, and the Kings don't have a goalie, so I would say the Rangers kind of do.
What about the Blues?
That's tough because the Blues look so bad. I would say the Rangers.
Okay. Nashville?
Rangers. Oh yeah, Nashville. Nashville is built like a franchise mode team. Like they do they have prospects? Genuinely?
They have one guy. Matt Wood, I think, is the one guy who's like under the age of 24 on their team, but pretty much everybody else is old.
Yeah.
Calgary?
Calgary is tough because Dustin Wolf is really good, but they're gonna trade Anderson for I would think prospects. So maybe that restocks the cupboard a little bit, but they're still kind of in that in between. So right now it's the Rangers, but talk to me in 3 months after the deadline, it might be Calgary.
Winnipeg?
Rangers, yeah.
Vancouver?
That's a tough one. It's tough now because of that trade. You trade Quinn Hughes and you get 3 blue chip, or if you want to say 2.5 blue chip prospects and another first round pick. I mean, that's sizable. Z Boom's going to be really good. You know, Rossi's going to be good for them. That's tough. That's a tough. I don't know. That might be a coin flip. I might lean Vancouver a little bit just because of what they could be in a few years, as opposed to what their ceiling is right now.
Seattle?
Rangers.
Chicago. The
Sharks. Oh yeah. Big time.
The Bruins.
The Rangers.
The Islanders.
It might be I think it's the Islanders. With Schaefer and all their young talent coming up. Yeah, I think it might be the Islanders.
The Flyers.
The Rangers. I think. But that one might be close. The Penguins, I mean, talk to me in 3 months when they trade some of these guys, and we'll talk. Because right now it's kind of it's the Rangers right now, but I would think in 3 months it'll probably be Pittsburgh.
Dare I say Buffalo?
Pass.
And then the last one.
Pass.
The Toronto Maple Leafs.
The Rangers.
Okay. The point of this exercise was to tell you there are a lot of teams in the NHL right now that are kind of in the wilderness, that if they have a good week, they're right back into a wild card spot. If they have 2 bad weeks in a row, we start talking about, can we fire the coach, the general manager? Can we make a trade? That's the point of this NHL season. It is as much of a mess as I can recall at any point. This is even worse than last year. And last year was the messiest of mess, where nobody wanted to win the last spots in the East. Nobody wanted to win that last spot in the West for pretty much all the way to the end. And it is even somehow worse this year. And I'll be curious if we can actually deduce anything statistically as to why this year has been so chaotic. But opportunity is abound. Right now, Detroit, Montreal, Tampa Bay, the Islanders, and the Flyers are all in playoff spots right now. In the West, you have the Kings, the Utah Hockey Club in playoff spots, and the first team out in the West is San Jose. It is not going to take a lot to have a good year if you are one of those middling teams. The question becomes, do you want the fool's gold, or do you want to eventually win a championship? Those are your options. Do you want your 2 or 3 home playoff games, or do you want to try and solve your problems? With each passing day, it becomes, more, at least to me, more clear the Rangers need to be honest about the direction of this. And if we're going to trade away pieces like K'Andre Miller and Chris Kreider, we need to be willing to trade away pieces like Artemi Panarin. I know Trocheck's got the 10 team, no move. And the closer we get to the deadline, we'll see how realistic it becomes. The Rangers can make those things happen. But at this point, it's at least worth a conversation, because even with those guys, they're not very good.
No, I mean the Rangers right now are not in a playoff spot. I mean, guys, it's Christmas, and the Rangers are not in the playoff spot. Like but again, it's so close that, like you said, the Rangers have a good week. Like, let's say they win the next 3 games, they're at 46 points, and all of a sudden they're second in the Metro. If the Caps and the Islanders don't win, like, there's so much flux that it doesn't take a whole lot to propel them to where they need to go.
And they can't even do that.
And they can't do that. So, again,
this is 2 straight years of this. 2 straight years.
You beat Nashville, a team that you really needed to beat. They are bad. You needed to win that game, and you were in a playoff spot. And you couldn't do that. And you come in after the game and tell Vince and Molly and those guys that, you didn't have any pride and it was a bad game. I mean, okay, it's December 22nd. Like, I kind of don't want to hear about that anymore. You have the opportunity to get these points, to win these games. And until you showed to me that you can do this on a consistent basis, this is who you are.
That'll do it for this week's edition of Liberty Blue. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. We'll talk to you guys next week. Everyone have a safe and fun holidays. We'll see you guys then.
Later.